Hi everyone, and welcome. Today, we're diving deep into the massive universe of MS-DOS. I've put together a selection of hidden gems that have been somewhat forgotten over the years, but they are still highly recommended titles to play and enjoy today. But wait, there's more. Halfway through the video, I'll bring you a discovery section featuring some pretty obscure and unknown games that many people might have missed. The goal here is to learn and discover some new titles together. But before we get to the heavy hitters, I want us to take a little trip back to a transition era. That moment when the PC moved from EGA to VGA graphics. And that's exactly where our first stop shines, Bubble Ghost. The name probably rings a bell because it recently received a remake in 2025 for Steam and modern consoles. However, its true roots are in European systems like the Amiga, where this little gem was born thanks to Infogrames. The MS-DOS version we're looking at is a port from that transition period. Playing it with the PC speaker sound gives it a completely different vibe compared to the original, but the bubble blowing mechanic remains perfectly intact. You control a little ghost and have to guide a bubble through a castle filled with hazards. It's a game of absolute precision, where one wrong puff or touching a candle means game over. For a late 80s game, the bubble physics and how it reacts to the air were actually way ahead of their time. In the 90s, the PC started to go toe-to-toe with consoles thanks to a brilliant idea, shareware. You didn't have to buy blindly. You could play the first episode for free, and if you were hooked, you'd order the full version by mail. It was a magical time of transition towards VGA graphics, and there was one company that became an undisputed seal of quality, Apogee. I'm sure many of you remember games like Crystal Caves, that mining platformer so relaxing and addictive that I remember spending countless afternoons on my compact 486. But if there's one game truly burned into my memory, it's Cosmo's Cosmic Adventure. That little green alien with suction cups for hands became one of the most iconic characters of my childhood. Climbing walls was awesome, but what really grabbed me was its colorful aesthetic and that signature ad-lib sound. It had a very special charm. These were games with a unique spirit that defined so many of my afternoons in front of the monitor. To wrap up this block of EGA games, I'm bringing you a title based on a huge 90s movie, Arachnophobia. Let's be honest, the controls are pretty clunky, but it's still playable and perfect for a fun afternoon. The mechanic is curious. You drive your truck, pick a house, and have to clear out an entire spider infestation. It's a real hidden gem, mostly because many people didn't even know a video game of this movie existed. A fun fact that I'm sure will catch many of you by surprise.
The egg sack. come from the west. This house is clean.
Now, it's time to make the jump to 256 color VGA and to one of the most brilliant yet curious gems in the entire MS-DOS catalog. This game hides one of those stories we love. It turns out Namco was so impressed by the technical quality and mechanics of this game, developed by the French studio Callisto, that they decided to buy the license for the American market. And what did they do? A total reskin. They replaced our cute protagonists with the world-famous Pac-Mare and rebranded it as Pac in Time. As you can see in the comparison, the game is exactly the same. Same levels, same physics, but with the yellow circle as the lead. Personally, I'll take the original version any day. In Fury of the Furries, you control Tiny, a round creature who has to rescue his king using 4 unique abilities: swimming, spitting fire, eating rocks, or using a grappling hook. It's an incredibly solid puzzle platformer with 8 themed worlds, from deserts to factories, that in the Pac-Man version honestly feel a bit forced. Moving on to a territory where the PC proved it could stand tall against consoles and arcades, MS-DOS had some fantastic arcade ports. I finally remember a pack that included Bubble Bubble and Rainbow Islands, which were my favorites to play at home. But what many people don't recall, or maybe didn't even know, is that an enhanced version existed. I've included it as a hidden gem for that very reason. Look at the image quality and the smoothness. It's a very impressive version that showed the PC was waking up as the technical beast it would eventually become. Honestly, I still think MS-DOS is one of the most underrated systems in history. And if we're talking about power and flexing some muscle, we have to talk about One Must Fall 2097. Here we see Epic starting to dominate the market. While consoles struggled to run decent fighting games, on PC we had this spectacle of giant robots with a killer techno soundtrack and lightning-fast gameplay. It wasn't just a fighter, it had a tournament mode with robot upgrades that made it incredibly addictive. Those little details made you fall in love with it, and it is without a doubt the gold standard of fighting games on MS-DOS.
Hello? Hello?
Help!
Who are you?
I'm Sam, piano player.
What are you doing down there?
Down where?
You're at the bottom of a well.
Wow, man, that's really weird.
I gotta go now.
Hey, man, don't leave me in here.
It's 2053. You're about to touch down on a remote island known for its beautiful women and its blood sport, robo-fighting.
You think fighting's free? You want... Smart move.
Time to settle your tab.
careful, okay?
Don't worry, Lieutenant.
Okay, to all groups, attention. Let's go!
Here we go!
I am Cronus Mela, the King's High Chancellor. His Majesty has asked that I give you this deed to the Shimto Plains. Garden spot of the kingdom.
Really?
Trust me. Yes. You will suffer.
When I said MS-DOS gaming is deeply underrated, I wasn't joking. A crystal clear example is Blizzard, a company that even back then was showing signs of extraordinary quality. Long before Diablo or Warcraft, they gave us Blackthorn. You play as a very charismatic hero named Kyle Vlaros, an exiled prince returning to his planet to reclaim his kingdom, armed with a shotgun and a serious attitude. The game drops you into a dark, brutal world where everything is about thinking before you move. It's not a run-and-gun platformer. Every move counts. Taking cover, shooting, and knowing when to push forward. The animation is incredibly fluid, the tone is very cinematic, and it oozes that classic 90s grit. It went mostly unnoticed on MS-DOS, but it's easily one of the most powerful titles with the most personality on the system. By the way, a very similar game in concept was Zorro, which was also a visual standout for its time. The sword and whip duels were great, but the problem was its punishing difficulty. Any misstep meant death. I played it recently and found it to be an extreme challenge, so if you love hardcore games, this one has it in spades.
Commander ordered the Metron unit to take out our friendly fire. They just stepped in the wrong line. Friendly fire? Commander tried to waste us and letting the scabs go. Man, done it now. We'll be fragged for sure. Nobody's going down. Just keep your motion check. We can't go home. You heard what happened to Owen? Yes, we can. Now get static. All right, we didn't fight any rebels, so we couldn't have let them go, right? No, we just sang on their head. Feel okay about this.
And to end on a high note, I bring you Crusader No Remorse. I've included it here as a major hidden gem because funnily enough, I completely missed it in my Best of MS-DOS video on the channel. Many of you will remember it for its protagonist, who in that red suit looks like he stepped straight out of the Star Wars Imperial Guard. But beyond the looks, this game was a revolution. It's an isometric shooter with incredible freedom of movement. You could use a huge variety of weapons, from standard shotguns to microwave cannons or plasma rifles that disintegrated enemies. But what truly makes it a gem is its interactivity. You could destroy almost everything in the environment, hack cameras, use terminals, and solve small puzzles while infiltrating enemy bases. It was intense, tactical, and a visual beast. If you missed it back in the day, take my word for it. It's an experience every retro lover should try at least once. And with this classic, we end today's journey. I hope you enjoyed remembering these gems and discovering some of these more obscure titles. If you liked the video, you know the drill. Give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you hadn't already so you don't miss more videos, and let me know in the comments which one was your favorite or which one you discovered today. Thanks a lot for sticking around until the end, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!
Personnel only.
Silent